At the moment in the Scarlet and Violet era, there are some cards that are really picking up some value all over the show. There's so many cards in the Scarlet and Violet era right now across multiple sets that are doing incredibly well. So today we'll take a look at PokeJace.io and a bunch of cards which are great to pick up right now. Some of them are relatively cheap, and some that grade in a PSA 10 can go for an insane price. So let's jump into the first one and let's take a look. All right, kicking things off, we're going Paldea Evolved, we're going Heracross, Illustration Rare coming in right now. Super cheap, this card. Look at all I'm gonna say is look at the cost of the card and then look at the PSA 10 price, right? So we're looking at a $16, well, roughly $15 or less cards, right? And then we're looking at PSA 10 at $225 and the PSA 9 is $25, right? So you're gaining an insane markup in a PSA 10. Obviously it's not going to be easy, hence the low pop count, and on top of that it's, you know, fetching price point. But if we take a look, right, we will get rid of the graded price. We just look at the raw market price. This card is ticking up, right? Over the past 6 months, we can see that not only on TCG Player, which is in the orange, but the market price is actually going above TCG Player, which is kind of strange because when we went back the other day and we looked through the Sword and Shield cards, TCG Player was just on its own doing its own thing. But it seems like in this case, not too bad, right? So yes, it has climbed, right? We've seen this card go from around $6 to $8 now on its way up. Well, in some cases, doubled at, you know, $16 to $12. Very, very impressive. So yeah, this is definitely one to go out for. I mean, I think we've pulled it, once maybe. Out of all of the packs of Paldea Evolved we've opened, but I think we pulled more Magikarps than we have the Heracross. So really interesting one. Even with Paldea Evolved, we've got the Raichu. This card has been doing crazy things. So we've seen the Tyranitar do very well. We've seen the Magikarp do very well. And even the Ono is holding relatively strong in Paldea Evolved. But the Raichu is also doing incredibly well. So raw price, we're looking at roughly around $40, right? A bit less on card market, but around $40. In a PSA 10, $205. That is very, very impressive in a PSA 10. And PSA 9, you're breaking even. Pretty much the case these days. You need to get that 10. And, you know, the 10 is starting to drop a little bit in value as the green line that we can see here. But it did go up to as high as $300. So that's pretty impressive. But if we take away the graded price, and we can see that the raw price of this card has been moving relatively well over the past 6 months. Paldea Evolved is getting more and more expensive, especially in the US. Over here in the UK, it still seems relatively easy to get hold of. I mean, you could pick up booster boxes for roughly around 100 to 110, which is pretty decent. But yeah, we were looking at cards 6 months ago that were sat around that $17 to $20 mark, and it is now, well, doubled pretty much. So very, very impressive for this card. Beautiful card as well. Tough to pull. We've never pulled it before on the channel. And like I say, we've pulled so many Magikarps and other things. We just haven't pulled this Raichu. So it is a good card. If you can get it graded, it's going to be good. But I think this is going to be a good one to pick up. And then finally from Paldea Evolved, we've got the fish. Not the Magikarp, the other fish. Chi-Yu coming in. Now I bought this for myself probably about a year ago. And I think back then I paid about £20 for this card. And I was like, you know what? I just like the artwork. Right? And that was basically it. I only bought it because I was like, you know what? The artwork looks nice. I haven't got it graded yet, but I am looking at getting it graded. It's $102 in a PSA 10. You're looking about the average raw price around $25. There's a lot more of these in a PSA 10 than a PSA 9, and of course compared to the other cards we just looked at. But it has dropped. It has gone from its highs of $180 down to $102 in the graded category. So now let's look at the raw price. So the raw price was sat around that $10 to $15 mark for the longest time, or around $15. And I thought to myself, when I bought it for £20, I was like, I paid a lot for this. But then it shot up. Right back in June on TCG Player anyway, went up to $40 on TCG Player, whereas the market price was still sat at $21. Kind of strange. But then it came back down, and now they're back to being level and neck and neck with each other, which is where it should be, and that is the healthy price point. Still up though on the 6 months, doing really well for the little fish. Next up, we're moving on to Paradox Rift. We've got the Altaria EX. This is the special illustration rare. Beautiful card. Reminds me a lot of the Aerodactyl from Lost Origin. So we're looking at around about a $30 card, or roughly around $30 for this card across all of the markets. In a PSA 10, 133. That's pretty good going as well. And as you can see from the green chart, that it's gone up, you know, has dropped a little bit recently, but it did go quite high to 173 from as low as around 90. So doing relatively well there. When we look at the raw price, it did go up, and it's still up on the 6 months, but it's just starting to sell a little bit. Paradox Rift is still quite easy to get hold of. Pull rates are a bit hit and miss, Of course, like, I've never pulled this card. I do have one. I bought one. I can't remember how much I paid for it. Maybe 30, 35 maybe. I think it was about £30 I paid for this, which was probably about 3-4 months ago. This is a beautiful card. I wanted it in my collection, so I went and picked it up. But yeah, doing well, really. You know, the last 6 months, it's started to come down a little bit, but neck and neck between all of the markets, which is where it should be. Then we got the Garchomp from Paradox Rift. We did pull this recently on stream. Beautiful card, really nice in the flesh. About $20 or so for this raw, not too bad. But it's 140 in a PSA 10, which is actually pretty good going. Even in a PSA 9, you actually make some money, which is kind of strange. You don't normally do that. So as you can see from the chart, it's doing really well in the PSA 10 price. It was up at around the $140 mark, and then it dipped to as low as 80 and is now starting to bounce back up, which is very, very nice to see. And in the raw price, this one's been pretty steady with the average market price being higher than TCG Player. I still think this is a good pickup right now. Garchomp, big fan favorite. It's beautiful artwork. Goes, you know, for pretty good value in a PSA 10. So I do think this is a pretty good one for about $20, which is still pretty good. I mean, the raw price hasn't moved much. But if you're looking to get it graded and hoping to get a 10, good shot. Right, we're going on to 151. We're looking at the Star Evolution line, but this time the middle one. We've been looking at obviously the big cards, and we're looking at the Charmander, Squirrel, and Bulbasaur. But what about Wartortle, Ivysaur, and Charmeleon? Well, Wartortle's doing really well, actually, to be honest. We're looking at around $21 on eBay, 18 on TCG, but 28 on card market, so quite high on card market. But again, if you look at the PSA 10 price, a lot of them graded in the PSA 10, like 1,200. Like compared to what we've just seen recently, that's a hefty amount. I mean, there's a lot more in a 9. But yeah, that's a decent amount. And even in a 10, you're looking at $115, even though there is a lot of it graded in a PSA 10. As you can see from the green chart, it's actually going up, which is very, very good. We go back 6 months ago, we're looking around $85, and now, you know, sitting around that $115, which is very, very impressive. But then when we look at the raw market price, TCG Player has been fluctuating quite a lot, whereas the average market's been pretty average. You know, and that's the thing we've seen with a lot of 151 cards. The raw price just hasn't really moved much. We've seen a lot of the PSA 10s of the SIRs fall, but the illustration rares are really proven strong, and this is an example of that. Same with the Ivysaur from 151. Again, we're looking at a card that's roughly around $20 or less. In a PSA 10 is $122, with still a hefty amount at 1,000 graded, and then 9 is only $22, so not the best there. As you can see from the green chart, it has been doing well on a PSA 10. You know, go back 6 months, you've been $75 there, and ending at 120 is very, very impressive. If we look at the market price raw, pretty steady across the board, and again, you see that a lot. So the fact is that the illustration rares are doing incredibly well in the PSA 10 roll. You have a lot of them holding good value. Now, of course, there are reprints coming, so that will cause a lot of these to fall, but maybe by a little bit, which isn't too bad. And then finally, we have the Charmeleon, which is sitting a little bit more expensive raw. A bit of a difference there, though, you know, 20, 25, and 30. You know, a little bit of difference between the 3 different markets. In a PSA 10, we're looking at $120, which is very impressive. Still with over 1,300 in a 10, and then in an 8, over 2,000. So it's not really worth it to get it. Sorry, in a 9 and 8. In an 8, it's $13, which is terrible. But yeah, as you can see here, not quite as good as the others. You know, the graded prices stayed quite steady compared to the last 2 that we just saw. And then when you go back to the raw price actually has been falling ever so slightly, especially with the average market price. TCG Player has been holding relatively strong. But if we look back here, 6 months ago, we're looking at $22, and now it's sat at 20. So yes, there's not been a big drop, but it has been a drop overall over the past 6 months. And I expect it to fall just a little bit when things get reprinted. These cards aren't easy to come by, and they do go for a pretty good value. And then speaking of value, we've got the Charmander. This is actually the Obsidian Flames Pokemon Center promo. Now, I usually say keep your Pokemon Center ETB sealed, but this is definitely a really interesting promo that fetches an insane price tag. So we look here, 37 on eBay, 42 on TCG Player, and 7 on card market. I don't believe the card market one, but overall, you're looking around about $35 to $40, right? So PSA 10, however, 283 in a PSA 10. That is insane. And in the 9, you look around $56. And as you can see, over the past 6 months, that PSA price has shot quite a bit. From hitting lows of around, what, 80? No, 56 to now sitting up above that 200 mark is very impressive. And then when we look at the raw price, it is on the rise again. So, you know, I don't know how... So, you know, you can go out and try and pick up some of those Pokemon Center ETBs on the secondary market. They are going to be more expensive, of course, than if you did have them from the Pokemon Center. You know, if you really want to get this promo. But I always say that the Pokemon Center, you know, ETBs are really good to keep sealed. But some of these promos, like the Charmander, can go for a pretty good price point. And if you get them in 10, it'd be even better. I think it might be quite tricky to get in a 10 because usually promos like that tend to get damaged. But if you can get in a 10, you're doing very well. So you have it, guys. Those are just some cards from the Scarlet and Violet era, which are really, really good to pick up right now. A lot of them fetch a pretty hefty price point in a PSA 10, but some of them are relatively cheap and on the uptick. And a lot of them big fan favorite Pokemon from some incredible sets throughout the Scarlet and Violet era. So in my opinion, I think now's a good time to get some of these cards. You know, some of them I do have in my collection, but there's a lot that I still really want to get hold of. I think for me, I still want to get the Evolution lineup from 151. I still don't have that. I didn't really open up much 151, but with more hitting the shelves later on this year, I'll have a real good chance of picking some of those up. But I do expect the prices to fall when 151 does come out. If you made this far to the video and you've enjoyed it, make sure to smash the like button, make sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content. Let me know your thoughts in the comments about these cards, or if there's any other cards which you think are really good pickups right now. Let me know down in the comments and give people some good ideas of some good cards to pick up right now. But that is it from me, guys, in today's video. I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you want to watch more Pokemon content, make sure to click the video on the screen. And as always, you guys are the legends, and I will see you all in the next one.